The firearms industry spent 2025 convincing you that performance has a price tag. They were wrong. 2026 changed the equation, and one pistol is proving it on ranges across the country, against guns that cost significantly more. This isn't about cutting corners. 2026. This is about engineering catching up to the market. And if you're still sleeping on this one, you're making an expensive mistake. This video is for educational purposes only and does not promote harm or unsafe use of firearms. Number 6. 9 Real Compact X. When people hear cheapest pistol, they usually expect compromise, weak materials, basic performance, and a gun you tolerate instead of trust. But the 9 Real Compact X quietly destroys that assumption in 2026. This isn't just a budget option, it's a calculated disruption to the idea that affordability means limitation. The first thing you notice is the build. SAR didn't design this like a toy-grade entry pistol. It feels solid, almost over-engineered for its price class. The grip ergonomics are surprisingly refined, locking into the hand in a way that feels more premium than expected. It doesn't fight your control, it supports it. Now here's where it starts to shift the narrative: the trigger. In this category, triggers are usually the first compromise. But the 9 Real Compact X delivers a clean, consistent break with a reset that feels deliberate. Not competition level, but far from budget-grade expectations. On the range, it behaves like a much more expensive platform. Recoil is manageable, follow-up shots stay predictable, and it doesn't punish newer shooters. That matters more than people admit, because a cheap gun that shoots poorly isn't actually cheap in the long run. But the real point is this: SAR didn't try to impress with marketing. They built a pistol that works, runs, and survives real use without demanding a premium badge. And in 2026, that's exactly why it beats expectations from 2025 entirely. Number 5. Shadow Systems MR920. If there's one pistol in this lineup that refuses to behave like a cheap category gun, it's the Shadow Systems MR920. On paper, people still try to place it in the budget conversation, but the moment you handle it, that idea starts falling apart fast. This is where affordability meets refinement in a way that feels almost unfair to older generations of pistols. Shadow Systems didn't just copy a popular platform, they re-engineered it with intent. The frame ergonomics are one of the first things you notice. The grip angle feels natural, almost like the pistol was shaped around human instinct rather than manufacturing convenience. The texturing is aggressive enough to lock in control, but not so harsh that it punishes long use. Now here's where things change: the shooting experience. The MR920 tracks flat, transitions between shots smoothly, and keeps recoil predictable even under faster strings of fire. It's not just about power control, it's about consistency under pressure, which is where cheaper pistols usually fall behind 2025 standards. The optic-ready system pushes it even further into modern territory. Instead of being locked into traditional setups, it adapts to red dot systems effortlessly, giving shooters a clear advantage in speed and target acquisition. And this is the real reason it stands out. It doesn't feel like a cheap alternative. It feels like a strategic shortcut to performance. A pistol that removes the need to upgrade later. In 2026, that mindset is exactly why it beats most expectations set just a year earlier. Number 4. Tisas PX-9 Gen 3. Tisas doesn't usually get the spotlight in premium conversations, and that's exactly why the PX-9 Gen 3 feels like a quiet shock in 2026. People still walk into it expecting just another budget pistol, but the first few moments with it start changing that assumption fast. The design is straightforward, almost disciplined. No unnecessary styling, no flashy branding tricks, just a purpose-built handgun that focuses on function over attention. But when you grip it, the feel is surprisingly refined. The ergonomics are more modern than its price suggests, with a grip angle that naturally aligns the sights without forcing adjustment. Now, here's where things start to separate it from 2025 expectations: the shootability. The PX-9 Gen 3 manages recoil in a way that feels controlled and predictable, even during faster strings. It doesn't jump off target like older budget platforms often do. Instead, it settles back into alignment with a kind of mechanical calmness that builds shooter confidence over time. The trigger is another area where Tisas quietly improved things. It's not flashy, but it's consistent. That consistency matters more than people realize in real defensive use, because predictability is what keeps performance stable under stress. And this is the bigger picture. The PX-9 Gen 3 isn't trying to compete with high-end pistols. It's doing something more dangerous for the market. It's closing the gap. In 2026, that gap-closing performance is exactly why it feels like it beats what 2025 considered acceptable budget standards. Number 3. AREX Delta Gen 2M. The AREX Delta Gen 2M enters this conversation with a different energy, the kind that doesn't ask for attention, but earns it after the first magazine. In 2026, when people talk about cheap pistols beating 2025 expectations, this is one of the names that quietly forces that argument to make sense. At first glance, it looks simple, almost minimalist in design. But that simplicity is intentional. AREX focused on reducing unnecessary complexity while tightening the mechanical foundation. The result is a pistol that feels balanced, modern, and surprisingly refined for its category. But here's where things start to shift: the handling. The Delta Gen 2M has a natural point of aim that feels almost instinctive. You raise it, and it's already aligned. That matters more than people realize, especially in defensive scenarios where hesitation is the real enemy. On the shooting line, it performs with a calm consistency. Recoil is controlled without feeling over-damped, and follow-up shots stay predictable. It doesn't try to be flashy or over-engineered, it just cycles, resets, and repeats with mechanical confidence. The trigger system is another step forward compared to earlier budget-era expectations. It's not competition grade, but it's clean enough that it never distracts from the shot process. That balance between simplicity and usability is where AREX quietly wins. And this is the real takeaway. The Delta Gen 2M doesn't try to compete with premium pistols. It competes with outdated expectations. In 2026, that alone is enough to make it feel like it outperforms 2025 standards without even trying. Number 2. Girsan MC28SA T. Girsan has always been the kind of name people overlook until they actually shoot it. The MC28SA T is a perfect example of that pattern repeating itself in 2026, where cheap pistols are no longer playing by old rules from 2025. At first impression, the MC28SA T feels straightforward. No dramatic design language, no overdone tactical aesthetics. But the moment you pick it up, it has a surprising sense of balance. The grip fills the hand in a way that feels intentional, almost like it was shaped for practical control rather than showroom appeal. Now here's where things start to change: the shooting experience. For its category, the recoil management is better than expected. It doesn't feel loose or unpredictable under rapid fire. Instead, it stays composed, returning to target with a steadiness that builds confidence shot after shot. The trigger is where most budget pistols usually show their weakness, but Girsan took a different approach. It's not perfect, but it's consistent. And in real-world use, consistency often matters more than refinement. You know exactly what the gun is going to do when you press it. But the deeper story is this: the MC28SA T isn't trying to compete with high-end platforms. It's trying to eliminate the idea that low cost means low capability. And in 2026, that shift in mindset is exactly why it feels like it outperforms what 2025 considered acceptable performance in this price range. Number 1. Stoeger STR-9 Compact. The Stoeger STR-9 Compact is one of those pistols that doesn't announce itself with hype. It earns attention through repetition, reliability, and pure function. In 2026, while people still assume cheap means limited, this handgun quietly challenges everything 2025 shooters thought they understood about entry-level performance. At first look, it's clean and utilitarian. No unnecessary styling, no attention-seeking design choices, just a compact pistol built for real use. But the moment you bring it up, the ergonomics start to surprise you. The grip angle feels natural, almost familiar, like it was designed around instinct rather than theory. That matters more than people realize when speed becomes a factor. Now, here's where it starts to shift: the shooting behavior. The STR-9 Compact stays surprisingly controlled under recoil. It doesn't jump off target or feel unstable during faster strings. Instead, it settles quickly, letting the shooter stay in rhythm without fighting the gun. The trigger is another area where Stoeger avoids the typical budget trap. It's not flashy or competition level, but it's clean enough to maintain consistency. And in defensive situations, consistency is what separates confidence from hesitation. But the real story isn't just performance, it's expectation breaking. This pistol doesn't try to impress with premium branding or overbuilt features. It focuses on doing the basics correctly every single time. And that's exactly why in 2026, The STR-9 Compact feels like it quietly surpasses what 2025 defined as good enough in the budget category. Outro. And that's the reality of 2026 budget pistols. They're no longer just cheap options. They're serious tools, closing the gap with premium platforms. Every gun in this list proves one thing. Performance is no longer defined by price. Now the question is, which one would you trust when it matters most?